Hello and welcome to another Sprues and Brews unboxing, and for a change you can see our faces.
Hello.
We thought we'd have a bit of a trial of a different way of filming these because we missed the old school kind of to the camera approach. Don't worry, when we open the box you'll still have a top down view, but it'll be a bit of fun.
You'll be able to still have a close up of all these lovely sprues and little amazing sprues, Matt.
Tiny, teeny weeny sprues. So massive thanks to Games Workshop for sending us a free review copy to have a look at. Today we are checking out Legion's Imperialis, the new Horus Heresy epic game from Games Workshop. Now, Dave, you never played Epic 40k, did you?
No, never played it. Never owned a miniature. To be honest, I'm probably the more cynical of us. I know you've been really keen on this.
Yeah.
I'm excited about painting some little tanks, but I'm a little bit intimidated, if I'm honest, of the scale, but everybody seems to be dead excited.
So, Epic, so a bit of background, Epic was basically, I remember we went to a games day once and it was described as 40k but stood on a step ladder. And basically, essentially, because it's all teeny weeny little 8mm figures, it lets you do the massive scale battles from the Horus Heresy. So think your kind of Siege of Terrors and stuff, where you've got thousands of troops. The kind of game that you wouldn't realistically be able to do in a game of, you know, traditional Horus Heresy.
Unless you had a week off work and a
very big table. Yeah, I mean, in this you're talking about massive, like, platoons of troops, entire tank divisions, titans, all that kind of stuff. So in the video what we'll be doing is having a look at what you get in the box. We'll be checking out the new rule set. I've had a little sneak peek at the rules, so I'll be talking you through kind of how the game plays and what to do. We've also got a companion article over on spruesandbrews.com. We're going to a bit more depth in a kind of full review, and we're also going to have some how to play Legion Imperialis videos coming out too, where we go through some of the concepts for people who are new to the game. But yeah, should we have a look at this first? We spin it round. Exactly. So spin it around, you can see the kind of the sheer pile of miniatures that you get in here. Now, the thing to bear in mind, each of these bases with the little pie Space Marines on is just like a normal base. I think it's like a 25mm base.
Oh right, I expect them to be at least like 30 or 40 mils. So even smaller than that.
Teeny weeny little bases with 5 Space Marines on, just to kind of get the scale of it. Because you know how big a kind of Titan is in Adeptus Titanicus. Obviously, scale down from that, you've got you know, the Lehman Russes in there. They're going to be quite dinky, but obviously because of that, you can have loads of them on the table.
Yeah, I think that's what most excites me about this is obviously you get 2 Warhounds, is it, in this one? Is mixing in the Titans and the planes.
Yeah, and that's cool. There's some fun stuff you can do with it. Now, before you crack it open, you get 2 armies in the box. So you get the Astartes. There are different rules for different legions in this as well. So, you know, if you can pretty much recreate your Horus Heresy army as a tiny little detachment in Legion Imperialis.
Nice.
Which is cool. But the thing that really kind of excited me, you mentioned the 2 Titans. They've actually got some new weapons that are available in plastic for the first time as well. But the big one for me is plastic Solar Auxilia.
Didn't think it would ever happen.
I thought it'd happen, but I didn't think we'd see it in tiny scale first.
No.
I'm pretty sure we'd probably get full-size ones coming soon, but you get an absolute assortment of them, including teeny little Ogrins. When we were setting up, you were like, I didn't know you got a load of Ogrins in there.
That's Ogrins. That's really cool. Yeah, I really like the Imperial tanks. And of course we've got the new Sentinels as well.
We have the new heavy Sentinels. So what we'll do is crack open this box, have a look what's inside, and learn a little bit about Legion Imperialis. So let's crack open the box and have a look what is inside. And there's a fair bit of plastic in here, but I think the thing with this one is that obviously they're smaller models, aren't they?
Yeah, but you get a lot in here. It's good to see as well, like the Heresy Age of Darkness. Got little rubber...
Classic whippy sticks.
Whippy sticks.
Yeah, and templates, again, they're the same as the ones in the Horus Heresy, so loads of people already have these if you play any kind of specialist games. But what we're really interested in is the new kit. So what I'm going to do first is just pull out the slightly older kit, and that is the Titans. Now, I don't know if you've actually seen these in the flesh before, Dave, but these are the same sprues that we used in Adeptus Titanicus for the Warhound Titans, and I think a lot of the Titanicus kits are going to get repurposed in this because they're exactly the same scale as is the Aeronautica stuff, and even though these are old frames, for this release, they have released a new sprue. So this has some of the new weapons that were previously in resin before.
Oh, nice.
But you've got the Ursus claws, I think, on here, and the shock lancers and all the kind of stuff like that. The kind of close combat Titan weapons.
I'm seeing a lot of rockets.
They look really nice, don't they? What are your thoughts on these, Dave? I don't think you've seen the kit in person before, have you?
No, so I've seen them made, but not the actual sprue. So I've been tempted by Adeptus Titanicus for a while. I think this is going to be my in. I know, obviously, the Titans play a bit different in this game because they made it quite clear, haven't they? You don't have all the terminals and stuff. But so it's a lot easier to kind of play with them. But I think could be my into the game.
Yeah, I mean the really exciting thing about this though is all of the new teeny tiny kits. The Titans are cool, but not quite as exciting as a load of tiny Space Marines. So let us pick up. In fact, speaking of Space Marines, we'll take the Space Marine frames out first, I think. So most of these you get 2 duplicate sprues for, and this is how they come boxed as well if you pick up the separate £30 boxes.
Okay.
So what we'll do is have a quick look on here. Now these are super tiny, so make sure they come focused out. We've got plastic assault marines on there. We've got tactical marines. There are plasma gun wielding marines. There are terminators. There are 2 Contemptor dreadnoughts on this frame. You also have rocket launchers, and I think that winds down the kind of like, I guess the Ranger models on there. Now I know, Dave, you were a little bit kind of what's the word? Maybe intimidated by the size of them.
Yeah.
If you look how the models are, you say if you're doing Blood Angels, you could literally spray this entire sprue red, hit a wash over it, and then just paint the guns.
Yeah.
Because they're so small, you don't need to worry about that level of detail.
I like the fact there's a Terminator on here with a Thunderhammer.
Yeah.
So I know that's kind of flavour of the month for Heresy, but I don't think they've actually got a kit with that yet. So that's interesting.
So yeah, so what do you think of them, looking at them now in the flesh? Do you feel as kind of like intimidated by the models?
I'm still a little bit intimidated, but I think they are, yeah. I definitely want to give them a go. Like, maybe I'm not as put off as I was.
Yeah,
I'm loving the look and Contemptor.
They'll be really, really quick to paint up. Now, the other infantry kit that we've got in the box is the Solar Auxilia. Now, this is what I'm going to be painting up in this set. Jay is painting up the Blood Angels using the Marines kits. I'm going to be working on the Solar Auxilia. And these look absolutely amazing. Again, with the level of detail, I'm just spraying them grey, putting some red details on the helmets, painting the weapons. They'll be so easy to paint, especially doing them on the sprue as well. Now, there's some of them on here that are multi-part. We've got the Ogrins, who go together in a few different pieces, and we've got the Heavy Sentinels that go together in a few pieces. But all the others, you'll see how the position on the sprue, that the sprue connection point is actually on the base of the miniature. So you can paint the entire model without taking them off the frame, because otherwise it's a little fiddly model. If you attach those all to the bases, they're going to be hard to get to too.
Good call.
So painting them on the frame, it's so easy. You just literally just paint the weapons.
Yeah.
And spraying one colour.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be scared about painting little miniatures. They're easier to paint than big miniatures because they've got less detail to have to worry about.
They look really cool.
They do, but that's not all that's in the box, Dave. We also get some vehicles. Now, we get a couple of Sakaran pattern tanks and a couple of Predator pattern tanks. Now, I suspect when these come out separately, whether this will be one box with 2 different types of tank in, or you'll get, say, a Predator tank that has this frame duplicated. At the time of filming, I don't know that. So you've got approximately, half of one of each kit if they are done that way, which gives you, 3 Predators and 2 Sakarans. And again, these look really nice, the detail on them, don't they?
They do, don't they? I like the fact they even come with like the dozer blades and stuff.
Yeah, pretty much all the weapon options that you've got as well, I think, are on there too. So again, really, really nice. I don't know if you've got a guy coming out the top of it. I think you do there as well. So yes, that's the Predator frame. Apologies, the camera's tracking a bit on these teeny tiny models. At the end of the video, we'll have these built and painted so you can see them a bit better. So that is the Predator. And then we've got the Sakaran, which again is a really, really nice model. And again, it's just a scaled down version of the 40k one. It's going to be quite easy to paint these too. If you've the same techniques you've used to paint a big one, you'll be able to do on here. But again, you don't necessarily have to worry about all the detail on them because they're teeny tiny, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
So that's the 2 marine frames that you get in the box. We've got 2 more frames left in the box, and again, I suspect these are going to be sold as 2 different boxes, one with Lehman Russes, one with Malcadors. But we'll look at the Malcador first. It's a bit bigger and chunkier, and you get just 2 of them on this frame. But again, such a nice kit with a couple of different weapon options too. Generally the tanks you can build as either anti-infantry or anti-tank, and as we'll see in the rules a little bit, anti-tank is very much anti-tank. A weapon might be, I don't know, -4 AP in anti-tank, but if you shoot it at an infantry squad, it becomes AP 0. Which basically the kind of the reasoning behind that is that, you know, shooting a las cannon at a squad of 10 marines, you might kill one dude. For the scale that we're talking for Imperialis, you haven't killed that squad, you've killed a guy, so the squad's still alive, where it could one-shot a tank. So I quite like that.
It's a lot easier to hit a tank with a las cannon.
But not so much they're hitting it, it's killing it in one shot. You're never going to kill a squad of Space Marines with one shot.
Oh, absolutely not.
But a squad of heavy bolters might do the job, but that'd struggle getting through the tank. So I think one of the things that people will be considering, we'll see in the rules as we look later on, is how you kind of arm these vehicles. But yeah, really, really nice kit. So before we dive into the rules, Dave, what are your kind of thoughts on the models in here?
I'm especially keen on the tanks, which I expected I would be. There's quite a few small parts, but it doesn't look too bad to assemble. I am impressed with the Marines though. I actually think they will be a little bit easier to paint than I imagined.
They'll be really easy to paint. I think you're too worried about trying to paint little details where you're painting details like small on normal models anyway.
Yeah.
So we'll look at the paper stuff that comes in the box. We get the full construction booklet. We'll have a quick flick through that now just to kind of show you what we have got in here. Most of these models are a single part anyway, so if you look how the command squad goes together, the good thing is it shows you what models go on that base. There's a couple of multi-part models, so the rocket launcher, you just got to stick the rocket onto him, and the contemptors in like, what's that, 5 pieces?
Yeah. Do you know with this as well, you know, you talk about painting on the sprue, I think this is another reason why, because once you start putting them on that base, it's going to be very hard to get to the backs of some of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I absolutely wouldn't stick them down and paint them.
No.
You either want to cut them from the sprue, attach them to something and paint them, or just paint them on the sprue. The sprues look like they're designed to do that.
Yeah.
The bigger multi-part ones cut out, and like the contemptor's probably going to be fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think there'll be any issues with that. And then again, the same with the Solar Auxilia. Most of these are single piece models that you just cut off the sprue and stick on. The Ogryns are in like, what's that, 4 parts?
Yeah.
And then the Sentinels in a couple of parts. So again, really easy builds. As we move on to the tanks, you said there's a couple of small parts, but again, it's really just sandwiching the hole between the tracks and putting the gun on the top. And again, there's a couple of weapon options, so you might want to just check the rules for stuff. One thing to bear in mind in games of Legions Imperialis, your various detachments, and a detachment is basically a unit in Imperialis, has to say fire at the same target. So you couldn't have a squad of, if you had a squad of Lehman Russes, for example, and had 2 with las cannons and 2 with battle cannons, they'd all have to fire at the same target.
Yeah.
So you'd be better taking a unit of 4 las cannons and a unit of 4 battle cannons, for example.
Yeah, keep your units with a single purpose. Yeah,
now some things in the game do have the ability to shoot other weapons at different targets, but I mean, they look so cool, don't they?
They do. They really do.
I really like the Malcador too. Again, there's lots of different options there for them, and the classic Mars Alpha pattern, Lehman Russ as well. I've got a couple of these for my Deathcore Krieg.
Yeah.
And then the kind of bigger build is going to be the Titan. And obviously this kit's been out a while for the Titan. My advice is build the skeleton, leave all of the different armour panels on the sprue, and paint it on the sprue.
Yeah.
And what you can do is clip them off. You can then touch up the bits of trim that you've missed. I paint knights in exactly the same way.
Yeah.
If you try and build it all together, what you'll find is that it's a little bit difficult to get to the skeleton sometimes. And we can see we've got all those nice new weapon options to the Shock Lance, the Ursus Claw, a Melter Lance, and a Volkite Eradicator. So you get those 4 weapons, and you can put them on there. One thing to bear in mind is that most Adeptus Titanicus models have got pre-drilled magnet holes as well. So if you pick up those frames for the other weapons, you can swap them out. For the Warhounds, it's a little bit trickier because you've got a ball joint into them. So I tend to just build them straight. But once you get to the bigger ones like the Reavers and the Warlords, absolutely use magnets.
Well, these are a little bit cheaper to buy multiple units, whereas you say the Warlord, you might only ever buy one, so use magnets where you can.
Yeah, so we get a transfer sheet in there as well, so we'll see if this picks it up because they are teeny tiny transfers, but you get some really nice details on there. So you've got markings for your Solar Auxilia units, you've got banner markings.
Look at that.
So you can put them on your tiny little banners, and you've got some motifs on there, which is really nice. You've got your transfers for your Warhound Titan, and then the Astartes ones as well have a couple of legions represented. I suspect we might get full transfer sheets when the separate kits come out for other legions. And it's specialist games. They'll probably put out big transfer sheets as well, won't they, for the other legions? But I really do like those regimental banners on there. I think that's really, really nice. So, really cool touch. So I'll put that to one side. We also get a load of tokens in here as well. So the main mechanic for Imperialis is that at the start of each round, you put face down tokens on each detachment, and the tokens basically kind of depict what the squad's going to do during that turn. So do you sacrifice moving in order for them to fire first, or do you have them march to try and cover more distance, or do you want them to charge? Because you have alternating reactions, until everyone's placed them down, you don't really know what your opponent's going to do. It's a really nice touch. So this is quite thin cardboard. I'd like to see them as... I'm sure third parties will do like acrylic ones. I think it'd be a little bit nicer.
Strange that they've done that when usually they're a bit harder cardboard. I don't know if they're trying to keep the value of the box down. Maybe
they might release some other ones. Again, people can easily make third-party ones, and I'm sure as soon as this game is on the shelves, people will be making those tokens.
I'm sure the rulebook's going to explain this, but what were the ABC? Are they objectives?
They're objectives, yeah.
Objectives,
They're objectives. So we also get a couple of reference sheets too. So these are handy to have and explain the main phases in the game, what your different orders do. I really like it when boxes include this.
Yeah.
I'm always a little bit miffed when they don't, because we've kind of made our own for some stuff, haven't we?
Yeah, I'm shocked the 40k ones didn't come in Leviathan. I mean, they are in the current, at the time of recording, they're in the current White Dwarf, but it would be nice if they were in the box.
So we're going to have a look at the main rulebook in a second, but before we do, I just wanted to show you these bases. So all of the Titanicus stuff and the Aeronautica stuff is getting rebased with some new Imperialis ones, and if you check out the detail on those, just tip it into the light, they're all like ruined cities. I suspect the patterning on these will match the tiles that are getting released alongside the game as well.
Yeah.
So that's really fun. I'll show you the standard bases as well, which is just hiding in the other side. 25mm bases.
Look at those.
So one of them will have 5 Space Marines on for the scale of the game. So one of the things that maybe is a little bit misleading, while this has got 200 figures, each of those is 5 models on a single base, so it's 20 less than that in miniature terms, but you've got, I guess, semantics, isn't it?
Yeah,
but that is just one thing to bear in mind. They are teeny tiny models if you've got 5 models to a 25mm base. So due to the vagaries of the warp, we may have jumped ahead a few months here, but you know, that's the nature of the warp, isn't it? But we can finally have a look at the Legion's Imperialis rulebook. And you know what, this is quite a different game to a lot of other Games Workshop systems. Obviously, you've never played any of the old Epic games, have you, Dave?
No, didn't play any of them, Matt.
So this is more based on those early editions. So Space Marine, for example. If you maybe started playing Epic in the Epic 30k period or in Epic Armageddon, some of this will be familiar. You know, the tiny little models, but a lot of the mechanics are drawn from the early editions of the game. Obviously this is based during the Horus Heresy, so we get a lot of lore here about the background. A lot of people will know kind of the ins and outs of the Heresy. What's exciting here is the potential of us having expansions and supplements that cover the various big battles of the Heresy. You know, a game of Heresy is cool, you know, 3,000 points worth, but when you're talking about literally hundreds of Space Marines that you can be fielding in a game of Imperialis, it gives you the potential of doing some really good stuff. Like the Siege of Terror, for example, I can see absolutely being a supplement for this.
Yeah, I mean, a 3K game of Horus Heresy, Siege of Terror, yeah, it's cool, but is it really going to go anywhere near the grand scale of the Siege? No, well, a game of this would.
Yeah, well, for scale, approximately an entire 30k army fits into a detachment with loads of space to spare. A detachment being like your smallest little kind of unit on the board. Essentially that infantry box that you can pick up, it's either in this box or alongside it. That has more models in it, if you're counting teeny tiny models, than an entire Heresy army. So that's the kind of scale that we're talking at. So yeah, the game itself is quite different than a lot of other GW games that they've done. A lot of the turn structure's different, and I think it's going to be quite interesting for people coming into this. So a lot of the mechanics are the same. We've got dice, we've got, you know, rulers, we've got templates. There's nothing kind of completely weird there, like D10s and D20s. One thing that's worth pointing out here, a standard battlefield is 5 foot by 4 foot. So that is for battles between 2,500 points and 3,000 points. Now, that is a lot of models. You get approximately 600 points per side in the Imperialis box, give or take. If you pick up, we've got some armies that we'll show later on. If you pick up, say, the Soul Auxilia, add an extra box of infantry and the Baneblades, that's just shy of 1,000 points. Oh. So you're talking 3 times that for a normal sized game. Obviously though, it scales quite well. I've played a couple of games, like by myself, with the contents of this box on a smaller scale, on a 4x4 playing surface, and for up to like 2,000 points, I think that works quite well, so a lot of people will have that. Yeah. Obviously we have got these plastic tiles that are getting released alongside the same time. At the time of filming this, we haven't had a look at those in the flesh. I think I worked out you'd need 3.5 boxes of them to get a full 5x4 playing surface.
That's awkward.
It is. I don't know why they didn't do it in a multiple where you could have like just 3 boxes or 2 boxes.
Yeah.
I guess it's always going to be a problem. You can probably flog the other 3 spare ones on eBay or use them for armies on parade display maybe.
Yeah.
But so, it's going to be awkward if they cap them at like 2 per person to order on the website though, because you're going to have to hope that they're in stock later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
They look really cool. Obviously we saw in the unboxing there's no scenery or anything in this box, and that is a big part of the game. All of the ruins are up for pre-order today, and the old Adeptus Titanicus scenery has been re-released with a big £100 box, which has basically got 4 Titanicus scenery boxes plus the Spires box. So that, I reckon that and the ruins is enough to fill a table.
Okay.
Obviously we haven't played with them yet. What we will do is when they get released, I'm probably going to do a bit of an unboxing video and paint them up, because we're planning on doing some battle reports, and that's the key thing kind of holding us back at the minute, having enough terrain to be able to do that properly.
Yeah.
So really looking forward to that. Now, I guess the big difference with Imperialis is how the armies are constructed. So your little base of kind of models, it might have multiple models on there, but that is a single unit. So a base of Marines has got 5 Marines on there, but for all intents and purposes, that's 1 base of Marines in Legions Imperialis.
Could you imagine how long the game would be if you control individual Marines? That'd be pretty insane.
Yeah, exactly. So a base has got 1 wound, and that represents 5 Marines dying horrifically. Stepping up from there, you've got a detachment. So a detachment is a collection of units that so we'll see some later on, but an infantry detachment, for example, could have 4 bases of Space Marines, which you can keep as just that, and then you can add additional bases to it. So you could add some Plasma Marines to it, or some Missile Marines, or some Terminators, and all of the detachments are quite flexible in what you can add. Now the thing to weigh up is detachments have to stay within coherency when they move around the battlefield, every model within that detachment. So while you could go all out and add all these additional units to your detachment, it might become a bit cumbersome, and also they all act as one. So the other kind of big thing about Imperialis is that at the start of the game, Each player places down orders face down on each of their detachments. So if you, instead of having that detachment that we talked about earlier with 4 bases of Marines and then added some plasma and some missiles and some Terminators, you might be better taking a unit of Marines and then a separate detachment of Terminators, because then you could give them different orders. Now there's pros and cons. You might want to throw some Terminators in there because if you get charged you've got some hard hitters then, or you might want the heavy weapons to give you a bit of fire support. So I think it's going to be quite interesting seeing how people build their armies, because depending on your play style, you might just want a big detachment that can plod forward and you've got some other bits in there to take charges and the like. Going up from a detachment, you then have a formation, which is the kind of the overall core of an army. You might have multiples of these within an army, but they basically represent multiple detachments and they'll be tailored towards a certain way of fighting.
Yeah, if I was to kind of compare that to something, I would compare it to detachments from 9th edition in 40k maybe.
Yes, kind of.
So you've got like, you know, your Ultramarine detachment, but you could have them with like the Imperial Fist detachment as they were in 9th edition.
Yeah, so again, we'll look at that later on in the book as we get to it, but essentially you could have a tank formation, which is based around lots of tanks and stuff, and within that you've got multiple tank detachments and then some supplemental stuff that can run alongside them. Stuff within a formation doesn't have to stay within coherency. Even if they're multiple detachments, they can all operate independently. You have to take at least one formation for every 1,000 points that you take as well.
Okay.
So you're going to have multiple forces. 30% of your army can be drawn from allies as well. So it could take multiple allies as well. So you could have, say if you've got a 1,000 point list to make it easy, you've got 300 points that can be spent on Solar Auxilia or Titans, for example. So again, we'll see all that as we go on, but it gives you quite a lot of flexibility in how you build it. Now, the orders are massively important to games of Legions Imperialis, because that's what makes it really, really interesting compared to other Games Workshop games. Like say you put these face down at the start of the turn and you don't know what everybody's got until you what flipped over at the end of the order phase. And what orders do, they basically make you more effective in a specific turn, or they make you able to act in a specific phase, and they can even lock you out of different phases. And it's a game of kind of rock, paper, scissors in how you do this. Essentially you put your orders down in the order phase, then you roll for initiative. Like in Age of Sigmar, the initiative could change between turns. And then, where things mix up a little bit, we've got shooting, combat, shooting.
Oh, right.
So you've got the first fire phase, where everything with the first fire order gets to shoot.
Okay.
You've then got melee, so engagement, and then you've got all the other shooting at the end of it.
Interesting.
So it's quite a different format. So first fire, you put it onto a unit. They are not allowed to move during the movement phase, but they are allowed to shoot during the first fire phase. So they will shoot before every other detachment that hasn't got a first fire order. So you can use those to kind of neutralise key units. An advanced order is essentially your basic kind of normal order. That lets you move, it lets you shoot. You can't charge with it. You can basically use your activation to fire Overwatch. And that works in a similar way to, you know, in other games. During your opponent's move phase, at any point during the move, you can choose to shoot. It is -2 to hit though, so it's less effective, but you can potentially snipe things as they move past you. March orders are for getting around the battlefield quickly. You're not allowed to fire, but if you're basically normally it's double movement, but if your detachment is entirely made up of infantry, they go triple movement.
Wow.
As they're quick marching. So that can get your units around the battlefield quickly. And obviously the tiny little models, and it's a fairly big board, but with stuff like this you see units move around the board quite quickly. And then we've got charge orders. This is the only way to get into combat. It's very similar to the march order one. You move double movement, but with it you can get into engagement range. Now the twist is, any unit that's got a charge order and has moved at least an inch gets to have +1 to its combat, which we'll see a little bit. Now, that means that if you think you're going to get charged, you might want to put a charge order on that unit. The enemy's probably going to charge you first, but your piling move takes you over that inch to give you that extra +1 to attack.
Yeah. As if you're prepared.
As if you're prepared, yeah. Basically, they ready themselves for the charge. And then the way the game works is we then go through these different phases and we alternate activating detachments, starting with the player with initiative. So, in the movement phase, you might move a detachment, and then I'll move a detachment. And what you'll find is, like Lord of the Rings, you can have units dancing in and out of range as I'm trying to anticipate what you're trying to do in your turn.
Yeah.
So
I think as a good example, say if I've got a unit with that first fire on it, you might be like, well, you're going to shoot that unit here.
So I'm going to move
them away.
Exactly,
and
yeah.
I can't chase after you because I've got the first.
Yeah.
So I have to change my target.
So I think people really like this because it's quite. It makes you think. It's not as if you sit back and wait for them to play through the whole turn and then you do yours.
Absolutely.
And then we get to combat, and again, combat's split into 3 phases: the first fire phase, the engagement phase, and the advancing fire phase. With first fire, as we said, those models get to shoot before all the other stuff, which is really good. They can take out kind of key units before they get to it. Obviously, you've got some disadvantages that we mentioned, that you can't move, but you're like Baneblades and stuff, when them shooting away to take out some key units. It's more like Warcry, I suppose, for that, in that you just roll to hit, there's no wound roll, and then your opponent makes a save roll.
Okay.
Weapons still have AP, just like 40k, and some of them are quite powerful. So, I think off the top of my head, a Space Marine's 5+ to hit and has a 5+ save.
5+, oh.
So,
okay.
But then as weapons get better, so there's a lot of keywords and weapon abilities in this, similar to Horus Heresy. But what makes it really clever is how they've really made this game so that you need specialist weapons to take out specialist units. So a laser destroyer, for example, is a horrifically powerful weapon. Off the top of my head, I think it gets 2 shots, it hits on 4, is AP -2. A Lehman Russ, for example, I think has a 3+ save and 1 wound. So if it got hit by that, it'd get a 5+ save. If it failed, it's destroyed. Boom, you've blown up a tank. What makes the game interesting, though, is that weapon has the anti-tank keyword, which means if it's shooting at infantry, it has 0 AP. Oh. So you can't just take all the best tank weapons in the world, because they might be really good at taking out tanks, but they're rubbish at taking out infantry. And the way the in-game logic for that is that massive gun could kill a guy, but there's still 4 other guys on that base. So in the grand scheme of things, it hasn't actually done anything.
Yeah.
Where your dedicated anti-tank weapons, anti-infantry weapons, won't necessarily be as good as taking out tanks and stuff, but they can mow down infantry, which really encourages you to have a range of different weaponry. Really, really cool, and it's something that I think they've pushed into a little bit in the 10th edition of 40k, but they've not gone as far as this, where a las cannon is basically rubbish to shoot at an infantry unit.
It's more like Heresy, really, isn't it, with weapons?
Yeah, I'd go even further than that, really, in that, you very much need specialist weapons, where in Heresy, if you've got a squad of las cannons, they can kill a unit of marines, they can kill a tank, they don't care, do they? Where in this, you're probably not going to kill an infantry squad with a las cannon, but you could kill a tank, so I really like that change. In engagement, models basically pair off one by one. So if you've got because you've got big detachments with multiple bases, you would basically pair them off where possible. So 4 go against 4, they would pair off into 2s. And the way combat works, you roll 2d6 and you add your combat factor, CAF score, and both sides do that. If you've had a charge order, you get +1 to that dice roll as well.
Yeah.
And whichever side gets the highest result does a wound to the other side. No saves.
Okay.
So you just kill them. Combat's quick and brutal. If it's a tie, they remain in combat, but the next turn they get an additional dice. So then you're rolling 3d6 and adding the CAF, which makes the swings better and means that over a prolonged combat, somebody is probably going to spike high on that dice roll.
You're not going to have a combat that's going to go on for the complete game. It's more likely someone's going to win.
Yeah, each turn it's more likely someone's going to win because there's more random factor.
Yeah.
There are situations where you maybe can't pair off things one by one, and you might have a poor base that's fighting against 4 other bases. In that circumstance, that single base would have to fight each base it's in contact with one after the other.
Right.
So it fights the first one, boom. If it wins, it's still in prolonged combat, so it gets the extra dice and then fights them. So it could potentially chain through and one guy kill a load of things. It's unlikely because if they get unlucky, they're probably dead, and most things in the game have got 1 wound. But yeah, some really fun stuff like that. Basically, the side that's lost the most kind of bases in the detachment, then does a morale check and could potentially fall back. If they pass, it carries on for another turn.
Okay.
So again, quite quick. And then after that, we then have the advancing fire stage. So that is basically the second half of the shooting phase. And what's interesting with that is that say you just had to combat, you're in combat with my detachments, Dave. You've done really well, you've wiped them out. Amazing. Your detachment's now set on that objective. But wait, in the advancing fire phase, your unit that's just killed my unit is now an eligible target for all my horrific guns. So you've got to be really careful with the back and forth and what you do, which really makes you think about the order that you resolve things, the kind of units that you pick when going back and forwards, making it a much more interactive game than 40k, for example. We've got detailed rules on terrain, so basically units, infantry units in particular, can garrison buildings, and then you've got to kind of like fight them out of there, which is really cool. All units can also be destroyed as well and replaced with ruins, so you might have a unit bunkered in there, and it's going to be a pain for me to kind of smash them out with infantry.
Blow the building up.
Yeah, there's weapons that specialise in destroying buildings, so blow up the building, get rid of the guys in it, and then there's just a ruin there.
Nice.
And again, there's models to accommodate that as well, so I really, really like that. We have got Titans in the game too.
This is the bit I'm excited about.
So the bad news for you, Dave, is that you can only take one specialist detachment. So normally you're only having a single detachment of Titans. Now in the case of Warhounds, you might have multiple engines within that detachment. So you could take 2 or 3 Warhound Titans in a game, but you're not going to be able to take, you know, a Reaver and a Warhound and a Warlord. Now, of course, you could always house rule that yourselves.
Or if you've got having a bit of a narrative game.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
You could change that.
But per the match play, for the match play rules, and it makes sense because Titans are ridiculously destructive and very hard to kill. You're really going to need some kind of anti-Titan weaponry to deal with that. But then I would say, like we've mentioned before, with Legions Imperialis, you probably want to have a range of different weapons and units available to do that. So you probably are going to want to bring a Titan, or at least something with, you know, volcano cannons or something, to take them out. We've also got flyers as well. So they work very much like they did in previous editions of Epic, where they can fly on, do something, then fly off back to base to refuel. There's flyers with transports as well, so you can get your units across the battlefield. Like we can see here as we're going through, there's a lot of special rules and kind of keywords on weapons and stuff. You do get the grips of them after you've had a few games, but I would recommend maybe making yourself a cheat sheet, because there's a lot to remember at first. Games which we have released, which I think we showed in the unboxing, some cards. I think we've got another video up today with the range reveal. Some cards with the stats on and the various keywords and stuff, so you can use that for some reference. But the actual universal special rules are within the book, more like Heresy, rather than in 40k where they're actually written on the cards.
I was going to say, if you've played Heresy, you're kind of used to having all these keywords. If you're coming from 40k, it's probably something you're going to take a little bit of time to get used to. I know from playing 40k a lot myself, going into playing more games of Heresy, it's kind of like the thing I'm getting over, but it's worth it in the end. Yeah,
and it means they can do more kind of gradients of stuff that's not so clear cut, which is really cool. So obviously we get match play rules for fighting a battle. It does allude to narrative play, and it wouldn't surprise me if they bring out a series of supplements that maybe recreate battles from the Horus Heresy and give you suggested lists so you can refight those battles.
Yeah.
There are 4 match play rules in here though. You get 12 base missions, which is really cool. And a lot of them are variations on taking objectives or trying to do things like we had in most games. In addition to that though, you also have a series of secondaries. So we'll see some of those examples in a bit, but basically you roll 2d6, that randomly generates the 2 secondaries you've got access to, and then you select one of them that you want to try and do. So for example, one of them is plant the standard. You pick a single model in your army to have a flag, and their objective is to plant that within 12 inches of the enemy deployment zone. At board edge, sorry, so really get there. And then there's a scaling system of points, so if the model's still alive at the end of the game and he's got his flag, you get some points. If he plants it and there's enemies nearby, you get a few more points. If you plant it and there's nobody nearby, you get the maximum points.
Sweet.
So you're trying to do those in addition to capturing objectives and stuff. with there being this kind of range of different secondaries, again, you want to build your list to make sure that you've got units that can do multiple things, which makes it quite fun when building a list, and I don't think you're going to see much kind of cookie cutter stuff. Now, like with OC in 40k, they've wanted to make sure that you need your infantry. Yes, they've only got one wound. Yes, they're going to die horrifically to the brutal weapons of the Horus Heresy, but they're the most accomplished at taking objectives. And what they've gone for is like a swinging scale of what the unit's worth on an objective.
Okay.
So infantry bases are worth 5 each, cavalry and walkers are worth 3, vehicles are worth 2, knights are worth 1, and titans are worth 0. They are far too big and ridiculous to be capturing an objective. So that, again, that shows that you could rock up with a load of tanks and vehicles and titans, but you need boots on the ground to be able to get those objectives. Now, that doesn't stop you from doing a mechanised, you know, I can see you doing an Astra Militarum, Solar Auxilia force, Dave, with loads of tanks, but then you maybe have some transports with guys in who, once all the tanks have rolled over and blown everything up, you can then roll in with your guys to kind of take the objective.
Sounds like something I would do.
Yeah, so really fun. We get a lot of objective scenarios. They're all variations of stuff that we've kind of seen in the past, so you get, you know, points for having more points for having objectives in your opponent's deployment zone, you know, varying on the mission. So yeah, we'll skip through those. Secondaries, again, we'll run through these quickly, but there's one about killing stuff, there's ones about getting into certain positions, trying to get past the other opponent's deployment zone, trying to play a standard, all that kind of stuff. So you want to make sure that you've got quick units and infantry that can try and do that. Now we get the gorgeous models. Well, this is it, and this is probably about, I don't know, 2,500 point game. I think dense scenery really makes it, because you want those kind of firing lines for people to go down. I really like the official tiles that they've got, and I'm going to be ordering some. This morning is the time when this video goes out, because I think it's going to look really, really good. I think that's one of the big things about this game, the visual appeal of it.
Yeah.
So good. So we talked a little bit about building an army. You do have your points limit. You've got 30% of it that can be allied. Otherwise, you're free to go. You build your army around these different formations. So there's 2 full army lists within the book, and then like an extra supplementary army list in here for your titans and knights. Now, my one kind of like bugbear about this book, and the game's amazing, I've had so much fun with this, but we've seen a lot of units on Warhammer Community that are upcoming for the game. Not all of them are within this book. So they're all going to be in the supplements.
Right.
So drop pods aren't in here, jet bikes aren't in here, all the artillery tanks for the Solar Auxilia aren't in here, the cool transport that we saw the other day on Warcom isn't in here. What is in here is essentially all of the launch models. We've got the weapons platforms, so the Tarantula and I forget what the other one's called, the 2 weapons platforms that we've seen, the Dreadio Dreadnought and the Leviathan Dreadnought. They're all in here. We get all of the rules for the Aeronautica flyers that are era specific. So all the Space Marine flyers are in there, and then all of the kind of the ones that fit with the Solar Auxilia. So you've got your Marauders and, you know, stuff like that. That is all in here. There's also rules for every single Adeptus Titanicus model as well, so all the Knights and Titans. It is a bit of a shame that this isn't a full army list, and that inevitably we're going to have to pick up another book to get the full army list. And if that's the case, that they drip units in every couple of books, we might need a small library to have all of the rules, which is a shame, because I think they could have been in here. Now, I don't know, maybe they'll release separate army books at some point, especially once we've got Legion specific units. So Justera and Terminators, or Horus, for example. There's no Legion specific units in here, there's no Primarchs in here. I imagine they'll all come later. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on that, Dave?
I would have liked to have seen all the units in this one book. I don't mind the order supplement, but yeah, that is a little bit annoying.
So here we'll have a quick look through the formation. I don't want to go spend too long on it because this video is probably already an hour long at this point anyway. But we are going to be having some more content on the site. I think the best way to show off these detachments is going to be in like battle reports and stuff that we plan on doing.
Yeah, I think. Sorry to butt in, Matt. Looking at the rules, it's quite daunting. There's a lot going on here, and this happens to me all the time, especially with sort of board games and stuff. They can look quite complicated, but then when you actually start playing it, it all kind of starts making sense.
Exactly.
And we know what Games Workshop are like. Sometimes the rules they write over 3 paragraphs when maybe it didn't need to be that long. So yeah, I think you're right. I think sometimes you need to see it in action to really get the flow of the game.
Yeah, you saw some pictures on our private WhatsApp. I set up a board to play through some games while I was writing the review, and in practice it's quite quick, where I know some people were worried it seems quite wordy and cumbersome, but combat's brutal and quick, and once you've learned all the keywords, that's going to be the real thing that kind of speeds up the game. So here's some detachments. The kind of standard Space Marine one is a Legion Demi Company, and you mentioned the old organisation charts. It is very much like that. So you have to take a HQ detachment, you have to take a support detachment, and you've got to take 2 core detachments. And then you unlock optional detachments. So you can see all here on the right hand side, all the various optional detachments you can take. Some of them are either or as well. So you see down here, you can take light armour or air support.
Okay.
And then you can also take artillery, a battle tank, or heavy armour. So they're flexible, but they kind of tailor into one thing. So this is really about infantry with some support, where there's another one that we'll see on the next page which is all about tanks with some support. Depending on which formation you take, some other kind of options unlock as well. So in this one, all your infantry can take rhinos, which is really cool. I imagine we'll see future ones where they can all take drop pods, for example.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. So to give you an idea of kind of what you can do in the stuff in the box, you can build a Legion Demi Company with the Space Marines, and you've got a tank unit that can be added there, or 2/3 of a tank detachment, tank formation, sorry. So if we flip over the page to the Legion Armoured Company, and I think this is probably what you'd be interested in, Dave, the compulsory bits are a unit of battle tanks, and a heavy armour. Now obviously in the box you get the Predators, you get the Sakarans. You would need to buy a box of Kratos in order to be able to use this armoured company.
You'll need that heavy.
You could put one of those tank units in here, but obviously you've only got 1 battle tank slot.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing, but I would say that at a minimum you're going to have to buy another box of Marines or a box of Kratos in order to get the full potential out of everything in the box. But that said, you can still use all those models, just not necessarily all in the same formation until you've got enough units to add to it. So yeah, I really like that. You can go full tank company, and you can have some air support with it. If you like your flyers, and I painted up a formation of Sons of Horus, which we'll see a bit later, with rhinos and stuff to try and represent this kind of infantry with kind of tank support. I'm also going to pick up another box of infantry and use all the various Aeronautica flyers that I've got to put together a Legion aerial assault formation. This one's really cool. Similar requirements really, HQ support and 2 core. You get lots of air support as optionals. What this unlocks though is that you can take Thunderhawks or Storm Eagles as dedicated transports. So you can have your entire army flying in a wave of flyers.
I quite like that as well, yeah.
And that's really cool. If you've got some Aeronautica models, it's really, really good. So again, I'm not going to go through all these because the video would be about 8 hours long, but we've got a quick look at what the profile looks at here. So this is a command squad. Obviously this is required in a lot of your formations. It costs 25 points for the single base. It moves 5 inches, has a 4+ save, has the combat factor of +4. So in combat you roll 2d6, add 4 to it, and that's your combat result. It's got morale of 2+, which is for your kind of morale checks if you fail combat. There's some other rules and things that will affect that too. It's got a single wound. And then we see the weapons here. They are a range of 8 inches, so you need to get pretty close to use them.
Oh, yeah.
They roll 1 dice, and they hit on a 5+, and they've got no AP. And then I forget off the top of my head what the keywords do on those ones. But yeah, essentially you can see the various weapon options are different here. So here's a good example of what we said earlier about, anti-tank being really good. A melter is 6-inch range, one shot, hits on a 5 but AP -3. However, with the anti-tank keyword, it's got AP 0 against infantry. So we've also got point defense weapons as well. They are fairly weak. It's got one shot, hits on a 4 and a 0. But point defense means that you can basically use it when enemy infantry get close. It's like covering fire.
Like a defense system.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have rhinos rolling up, they've got these point defense weapons that can fire away. So yeah, the core detachment, now obviously you need 2 of these in each of the formations that we've seen. Costs 35 points for 4 bases of Space Marines, and then you can add up to 4 upgrades, and each of those upgrades adds another 2 bases.
Cool.
So Tactical Marines, Plasma Marines, Missile Launchers, Terminators and Assault Marines. There's pros and cons to having all your units within one big detachment, because obviously you give an order per detachment, so if you've got dedicated anti-tank and stuff in there, and you want to be doing first fire orders and stuff, they might be better being taken as a separate support detachment, maybe by themselves.
To make them more efficient.
But equally, a big block of troops with all those Terminators and stuff in is going to be hard to chew through. We saw earlier that it's infantry that take objectives and stuff. If you've got Terminators and stuff in there, people are going to think twice about charging in.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how people do this. At the minute, I'm leaning towards, maybe pad out your core detachments with more bodies, so basic Space Marines, maybe some plasma guys in there to give them some support, but then have your assault Marines and Terminators as dedicated drops. In that aircraft formation that we saw, a load of Terminators and a Thunderhawk going in and just smashing face, it'd be really, really good. So yeah, there's loads of stuff in here. The Rapier batteries are in here, the Leviathan, the Dreadnoughts we've seen, the Tarantula and the Dreadio. They're all the models that aren't released yet. The rest of the stuff in here is just the models that are out today, basically. Cool. So we've got the Predators, they're available in the core box. They are going to get released separately, but I think they're only in the core box today, as are the Sakarans. And they've got the Kratos, which are a heavy armour detachment, which you need as part of your kind of tank formation. They are ridiculous. They've got 2 wounds, Dave.
Whoa.
Can you imagine?
The hefty hides of 2 wounds.
And again, lots of weapon options. And what's cool about a lot of these that we saw in the unboxing, the Sakaran, for example, when you build it, you can build both turrets. So then when you making your list, you can decide, do you want the kind of, we've got kind of the anti-tank gun, the anti-infantry gun, and tailor your list without having to lock yourself in when you're building the model.
Yeah.
That's not true for all of them. The Solar Auxilia stuff, you can build it so you can swap it, but the models are so small and fiddly, in the end I just glued them together and thought I'll just pick up another box and give them the other armaments.
Yeah.
But it's good to know that the option is there. And then we got all the aircraft from Aeronautica as well. So if you have already got an Aeronautica fleet, combine that with the stuff in this box, and you can probably be pushing 1,500 points. Add in some allies, add in some more detachments and stuff. I think if you're aiming for 3,000 points, you're going to need quite a few kits. But if you're aiming for 1,500, 2,000 points and play on a 4x4 surface, you don't really need too many kits over what comes in this core box. You want some aircraft, I'd recommend picking up another infantry box or 2 infantry boxes because they're really useful. Pick up some tanks so you can make a proper tank formation, and then you've got a decent force there. And also we know other units are going to come out in the future to tailor that. Each of the Legions Astartes has a special rule associated with them too that kind of represents how they fight. So it'd be nice to see Legion specific units. Realistically, I think they're going to come in expansions, and again, realistically, I imagine they'd be resin from Forge World, making them quite expensive, but
you say expensive, they're not very big.
We'll see.
More expensive than the plastic version, of course.
But again, it adds some flavour to them. At the minute, where are we? The White Scars, for example, favour jet bikes and stuff that don't exist yet. Word-bearers, Dave. So I know you've been putting one together for
Heresy.
For Heresy, I can see them being really easy. Spray them white and then Flesh Terror red over them, paint in some details, and you're good. So yeah, so we get all the rules for the different legions. We then get the Solar Auxilia army list, and again this is a similar kind of format where you get a lot of kind of... I really like these because they give you a visual representation of what a formation looks like as well. So you've got your HQ, your 2 core and your support, and then your optional formations underneath. And then the same with the Armoured Company, which I'm all over an Armoured Company, Dave, especially with the Solar Auxilia. They are a little bit different where they have a command structure. So you have a commander per 1,500 points of the army, and then you've got like a sub-commander that sits underneath that, because you are going to have multiple formations.
Yeah.
Again, it just shows how the army, you know, works a little differently. If you take a tank company, you can buy a tank commander as well, which basically improves his stats as well, which is cool. And again, a look at them. You've got a lot more bodies in a Solar Auxilia army. They are super cheap in points. I think they're like 12 points a base or something. But you can do some really cool stuff. And again, what's good about these is they've got quite a few slots for air support within their different formations. So I don't think they've got a dedicated air support detachment. But yeah, you can normally attach some aircraft to your various formations, and because they're so cheap, you're going to have multiple formations in your army anyway. Again, the Armoured Company, you can take all of the tanks in that.
Nice.
To unlock that though, again, similar to the Space Marines, you will need a Baneblade box. What's good about the Solar Auxilia though, you've got 2 tank slots within the formation. So all the stuff in the core box, you can actually fit into a single formation for the Solar Auxilia.
Sweet.
And I think it clocks in about 600 points for them, so, you know, a fair size force. So again, we won't go too much into these because obviously they're dirt cheap. 30 points for 4 bases of guys who, compared to the Space Marines, have got fairly terrible stats. They've got a 6+ save, 5+ movement, they hit on a 5 AP0, they're not going to threaten anyone, but you've got masses of them that can go on objective.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like... It's a weird one. You've got the Horde element of really cheap troops. You've got some cool combat stuff with the Ogrins and stuff that can march up. But then you've got, you know, Lehman Russ tank companies and Bane Blades and all sorts of cool stuff. The Super Heavies in particular are really nice. All of the tanks have got different sponsor options as well, which are tailored towards different targets. Again, you could build it to make them separate, but I just stuck them in place because they're too
small.
Yeah, and it's sure in a friendly game you could probably just say, you know, on
These
the
are
army
heavy bolters,
list. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Likewise, you've got all of the aircraft as well. I say all of them, all the ones that are era specifics. So you haven't got Valkyries and stuff, but you've got all those other vehicles. So yeah, I like both of those. I've painted a bit small force of both of them. We then get strategic assets. This is similar. It's a sub-list. Sadly, you can't build a list of just Knights or Titans.
Yeah.
But as we've seen from a score and objectives point of view, you probably wouldn't win games. You could blow everyone up, but you're not going to be taking objectives. These can be taken as allies, and again, you've got a 30% ally quota, which can be drawn from multiple lists. The difference with the strategic assets, you can only take a single strategic asset detachment.
Yeah.
So you could take, you could have a Space Marine army, and you could take multiple allied guard units with it. But you could only take a single Titan or a single Knight detachment. That detachment might have multiple models in it though. So what's good here is that you get pretty much the entire Adeptus Titanicus line. So all the Knights, all of the Titans, all of the cool stuff. So you've got lots of stuff that you can use, and they've all got different kind of roles and efficiencies. Again, we'll see more of the stats of the units when we do some battle reports, because I think it's easier to kind of see what they can do in person.
Yeah.
If you do want like multiple Titans, your best bet's go for some Warhounds. You get 2 in the core box that have got a range of different weapons, and quick aside, you can build them so you can swap out the different weapons that come on the sprue as well. Nice. But, you know, you're talking, what's that, 970 points if you take 3 of them. So you're only going to be able to use that in a really, really big game. Yeah. In most 3,000 point games, do some maths off the top of my head, about 700, 800 points you can take. So you could take 2 Warhounds, or you could take a Warlord Titan, or you could take a Warbringer Titan. So you've got some options. So what's nice is that you could take a Reaver at say 415 points and probably have enough points spare to take an allied detachment of, you know, Lehman Rusters or something.
Yeah.
As a separate little force, and you're still within your 30% allied thing. I think because you need so many models in a 3,000 point game, the stuff in the core box is quite nice because you use some models from another faction, or you could use some Titans and stuff to make up those extra points. So yeah, I mean, I know you were disappointed that you couldn't do an entire army of Titans, but I suppose the game Adeptus Titanicus exists so you can do that.
Exactly, yeah. Like you say, it wouldn't... To have a whole Titan army just wouldn't really work. But, look, I'm going to get an army in this at some point soon, hopefully. It'll absolutely have a Titan or a few Knights in there.
Nice.
I've always been tempted by Titanicus, but I think this is going to be my entry.
I think it's going to be quicker. It seems wordy from the book, but once you play some games, it gets really quick.
Yeah.
So we get some nice studio shots as well. I mean, those Ultramarines look gorgeous, don't they?
They do.
While we're flicking through, have you any thoughts on what force you'd do? Would you go Solar Orcs? Would you go Space Marines?
As much as a tank company sounds really, really cool, I think I'm edging towards a Space Marine force.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're word
Fires and
bearers
stuff.
to match my Horus Heresy, or maybe I go Imperial this.
What's really cool is that basic demi company that we saw is essentially a 30k army, so you can recreate your army as a detachment within the game.
That's really cool.
So yeah, I think that's really, really fun. But I mean, all these models look gorgeous. You were a little bit intimidated at first at the small scale, but me and Jay were chatting the other day. We painted up the contents of the box, and really, you're just trying to get the impression of it. You don't necessarily need to go to town edge highlighting and stuff.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of cool stuff just with contrast, just to give the impression of those colours. And then obviously your bigger stuff like your Titans, you can go to town with. Obviously, we see some of the new weapon options on the Titan. There's 5 different weapons on the sprue, and you can build it so you can swap them out as well, which is really nice. They should be compatible with the old ones as well. And then round up the book, we get there's the entire army list for the Space Marines with all the stats. But that's really cool. You can photocopy that, have it by the side of your table, and be able to see all those stats. You'd still need to look up the keywords and stuff for the weapons, but at least you can see your basic stats. And again, we get all the weapons here. They've got all the keywords on them, but again, you need the glossary of keywords. That's the one thing I'd say, similar to Heresy. Make yourself some cheat sheets with the keywords that you need, because there's so many rules that are similar across games. We've seen that with Twin Linked in 40k and Heresy. Having a little reference of what, you know, point defense or ignores cover or rapid fire means, you'll get the swing of things when you've played through the game. So that, and then you get all the weapon options in the back. You also get a transfer a sheet of the tokens that you can print out onto card. I forget if we did this in the unboxing because it was a long time ago, but you do get an envelope of these in the box as well. If you buy the book by itself, and this book is available outside of the box, obviously you've got that to print, print your own out. I don't know if they'll be selling the card tokens, but it wouldn't surprise me. So that was a look at Legion's Imperialis. So Dave, me and Jay have kind of been building the model and painting this. Now I've played a few games, and I mean, I've got to say it looks gorgeous on the table.
It looks ace, doesn't it?
What are your thoughts on what we've seen here?
So I'm not going to lie to you, Matt. I was very sceptical at the start because I didn't like the idea of so many tiny Marines. It just seemed a bit daunting. And when you look at the rule book, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of rules. Is it safe to say, looking at it on face value, it looks like one of the most complicated games that Games Workshop have done?
I don't think it is. The way the sequence in the game works, you put your orders down, your detachments, you reveal them, you move, alternate moving like Lord of the Rings, alternate shooting. That's quite simple. Yes, there's a lot of keywords and special abilities and stuff, but Horus Heresy's got a lot of keywords and special abilities.
Well, by us running through the book earlier in the video, it kind of, the way you explained it, everything seems a lot more straightforward than I imagined it was going to be. And yeah, I think I'm sold. I mean, looking at these that you and Jay have painted, I mean, especially the tanks, they're so cool. So yeah, it all sounds very, very promising. I'm really looking forward to having a game and seeing firsthand, because I think that's really what's going to grab people is actual games and seeing how the mechanics work. Like I say, looks like a lot on paper, but after listening to you and talking about the game, and of course you've had a couple of games yourself, it sounds like it's actually more straightforward than it seems.
Yeah, and you know what, the models aren't too bad to paint. We've got another video up today as well where we talk about the various miniature releases. So the models from this box we'll be talking about in that as well, so I'll have that linked in the description. Also over on spruesandblues.com I have got a full deep dive and write-up into the book. We're talking like 5,000 words. It takes like half an hour to read it, but I want to go into depth to kind of how the game plays and how all the activations work. So check that out over on the site. If you are interested in more content, we will be looking to do some battle reports, and so we want to do them more kind of narratively. We'll be telling a story, maybe not so much focus on the dice rolls, just the events of the battle, because I think that'd be really fun to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you would like to support the site as well, why not order your copy of Legions Imperialis through our affiliate, Element Games. We have got a link in the description. And if you have enjoyed the video, why not give us a like and a follow. We do lots of unboxings and battle reports and painting videos and all sorts of stuff like that. So all that content's here and comes out weekly, really, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
So yeah, again, massive thanks to Games Workshop for sending us an early review copy to have a look at. Yes, you may have noticed the lapse in time between us starting this video and ending it. Obviously, we don't know the ins and outs, but this was a little bit delayed.
It was well documented, wasn't it? It was imminent, and then suddenly it wasn't imminent. But it's here now.
It's here now.
That's what's important. And you know what, Matt? I think the only difficult decision is choosing what Legion to go with.
What Legion to go with? The correct answer is Sons of Horus, of course.
I'm not sure about that.
So yeah, until next time, have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Bye!